Hello. Hello. Hi, Christina. Hi, Carol. How's your Monday, Carol? Yes, actually, thanks for asking, Carol. I was just telling Christina earlier today that they're looking at sending grandma to a long-term acute care, like a rehab, basically. So she must be getting better. It sounds like that was my update today that she's possibly moving. My hair is crazy today. It's ridiculous. Possibly moving to a rehab fairly soon. Not the immediate future, but not too distant future. So yes. Good. I'm glad you survived Monday. Hello, Miss Bianca. Miss Bianca, I need your Cash App, please. Whenever you have a moment, can you either put it in the chat or send it to me some way or another? Thanks, Christina. This is my bed head. This is what it does when I do nothing to it, and it drives me. My dad has curly hair, and he's always loved my curly hair, and I hate it. I hate it. It's so frizzy, and I just have so much hair. Hey, yo, 1114 cat. So before we get started, I'll just say everything's alleged and our opinion only. I want to talk about a few things before we get into the IDAHO4 stuff for today. So our first ever members only live will be this Thursday. Of course, I'll make a thing for it either tomorrow or probably tomorrow will be the best. But I'll make a little tag thingy for it so you guys will remember that it's coming up on Thursday. Thank you, Carol. I wish I had poker straight hair. I feel like that would be so much more easier to just manage all the time. My goodness. This frizzy stuff is for the birds. I have to either straighten it or curl it or do something. I can't just let it be. Anyway, so Thursday we will do our first only members live. Plus, there will be a giveaway in there. I did just make a poll. I don't know if it's posted yet, but I'm curious what your guys' opinion is. If you guys would prefer two smaller gifts to give away to two different people or one large gift to give away to one person. I did make one of those spinny things. See, at first I was like, I'll just write everybody's name down and put it in a hat and, pick one. And then I'm like, no, I don't want anybody to think I'm cheating. So I just made one of those spinny things with everybody's name on it. And we'll just use that. Hey, Hot Pie. You saw the post? Good. For some reason, my YouTube has been wonky. I had an episode yesterday for you guys. I wanted to start the weekly recap and, just pull from every different creator that has maybe a boom or some important information. So I spent like 7 hours yesterday. It took me maybe an hour to make and edit the video, but then I was trying to post it and it wouldn't let me post it. And it was driving me nuts because it was actually pretty fun to do and watch everybody's stuff and it wouldn't post. So I posted yesterday an actual text post and I said, I worked on this episode. It's not letting me post. I apologize. We'll start it next weekend. And I just got that notification for that post 20 minutes ago that I posted yesterday. I'm like, oh God, I don't know what is going on. So I'm hoping everybody saw it. Okay, good. Everybody saw it. Awesome. So Thursday we'll do the members only live. Let me know on the poll what you guys prefer. You do have to be present to win. You do have to be on the live to win. So if we spin it and your name pops up and you're not there, we'll just respin for somebody who is there, just so you know and are aware. So have you guys paid attention to what is going on in the news with this whole David situation? Not related to IDAHO4, completely different case, but this is a true crime channel, so I do want to talk about it for a second. Is anybody aware of the case going on with this R&B singer named David? And he spells it D as in dog, 4, like the number 4, V as in Victor, D as in dog. So if you haven't heard of it, I'm just going to do a brief description. He's a, I guess, popular R&B singer. I didn't have a clue who he was, to be honest. Apparently some of his music is mostly on TikTok, but he, as of today, he's 20 years old and yeah, absolutely crazy. So messed up. Hey, Fizzy. Hey, Pokey. Hey, Pumpkin. As of today, he is 20 years old. He went on tour. He was driving a Tesla at the time. He seemingly abandoned it, so they went and towed it to a tow yard. And I guess somebody that works at the tow yard was like, something is funny with this car. It smells funny. So they went into the trunk, and on a Tesla, the trunk is in the front. And they opened it, and inside is a female dismembered body. It's just the head and the torso. Now, this guy had been dating a girl since he was 16 and she was like 10 or 11. And this girl, as of today, would be 15, but she passed before her birthday. So at the time she passed, she was 14. Her parents have had a missing person out on her. This is in California. They've had a missing person out on her for like a year, but she's been completely unheard of for the past like month or maybe more. And yes, so he is a PDF file, and they think that maybe she was pregnant, and that's why he, or they say he might have done this. He's not even arrested yet or anything, but his tour dates coming up have been canceled. I'm sure he's expecting an arrest at some point. I'm surprised he hasn't been arrested yet. That's wild. Everybody knows he was with this girl. Even her family knew. And that's the angle that I don't understand. Like, her brother knew that this guy was coming to pick her up all the time. I mean, they have matching tattoos. They knew that their daughter at 11, 12, 13 was dating this guy who is older than 18 and didn't do anything about it. Hey, Bridget. So, yeah, it's just wild. I don't know why they haven't arrested him, but he met her on Discord. He was like a Fortnite guy and started making music on Fortnite, and that's how he got famous. She's been seen like backstage at his concerts and all sorts of stuff. Like, it wasn't a secret to the people that knew them that they were together, and her family didn't do anything about it. And then put out a missing persons report, but apparently didn't tell the police that she was with this guy, this famous guy. That's just a weird angle to me. I don't know. Yeah, and it's strange. And you make a good point, Christina. Like, I wonder if he was framed, why would he leave her in his own car? And that's a good point. Like, it's either you're really, really, really dumb, or somebody else did it. And either way, he shouldn't have been being with an 11-year-old or 13-year-old or whatever it was. He has songs that are named after her. A lot of his songs are related to their relationship, like just a lot of things. But it is weird that, yeah. Oh, and that could be true that he might have paid somebody to take care of the situation. I don't get that. I don't understand why, just because the person you're with comes up pregnant, that then you unalive them. Like, first of all, that's so obvious that the signs would point to you being the person that possibly impregnated them or was the one that was dating them. But then you put them in your own car, and it's so stupid to do that if that's what happened. But then things like that happen make people question, well, did he really do it? Because that's really stupid to do, right? Yeah, so sick. And I feel terrible for the girl herself. Like, I can't even at this point say I feel bad for the family, because they knew what was going on, and it pisses me off. I feel bad for the girl that she was groomed, that her family knew that she was dating this guy, at least her brothers did anyway, and was letting it happen, and nobody protected her. Everybody failed her. She was unsafe everywhere in her life, and it's so sad what can end up happening to young girls when they're just coming into age and just trying to figure out who they are. They might meet somebody famous, and just because they're famous, that, they're excited, and it's a whole different world, and they want for nothing, but really they're just being groomed. It's just so sad. Yeah, Bunny, I mean, her brothers knew, or at least one brother I know of knew, that who was coming to pick her up every day. It was in the same Tesla that she was found in. So it's like, you knew what was going on. You knew who she was with. Nobody said anything because he's famous. Maybe he was helping out their family and paying the family bills. Who knows? Either way, yucky. Yucky all the way around. And my heart just breaks for her. That in her moment of thinking that she was with a famous person and she's never going to want for anything anymore. And, she thought she loved him. And really, she had just been groomed for about 5 years. And it's sad. I wonder too, Christina, if her family was paid. Everybody failed that little girl. I feel so, so bad for her. And she's just absolutely beautiful. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. And then Bunny says, I always wanted a brother. I have a mean sister. Well, I have a brother and he wasn't always very nice to me. So that's okay. We're all adults now. The brother-sister growing up relationship is funky. I always had a friend growing up that would like kiss her brother on the lips and stuff. And I was like, I don't have a relationship like that with my brother. Am I the one who's weird? Weird. Fizzy says, but you got to look at it in another way too. This would need strict parenting, and the parents would be looked at for being overly strict and such because of the whole gentle parenting thing. I do think in this day and age, 2025, a lot of people have to start thinking you can't please everybody, because it seems like these days, no matter what you do, somebody's going to point it out. Somebody's going to hate you for it. Somebody's going to talk crap up to you, and you could be doing the most innocent, minding your own business thing, and somebody will have a terrible comment for it. Like, you cannot please everybody. Yes, Sally, my brother's 2 years older than me, or a year and something older than me. Yep. His name is Cole Anthony. Cole Antoine. So yeah. Yeah, these days you can't please everybody, and especially like doing YouTube, and even though we're a super small channel, I still get really crappy hate comments, and like, oh, you should put something over your dog when he lays like that, like if his butt's sticking out or something. Like, he's a dog. Stop. It's not that big of a deal. Can't please everybody. I would have, Fizzy, to be honest. Oh my God, look at the picture you have as your profile picture. Is that real? Is that a real puppy? I have to know, like right now. Is that a real puppy? That is so stinking cute. It is. Oh my God, what's its name? Oh my gosh, that is so cute. I love the eyebrows, the like fluffy, heavy looking eyebrows. Such a cute puppy. Oh my goodness. So cute. I wish I had a sister. I still want my brother to be my brother, but I wish I had more siblings. To, I guess, have more instant friends growing up. Oh, I believe you, Fizzy. I believe you. Hey, Wicca Blank Shady. Wicca says, oh, you are so beautiful, girl. Being too strict and being too soft, there's a balance. People can balance. There's no excuse not to try to figure it out. No, I totally do. And I totally agree with you. And I think for the most part, most people do try and balance it out. But honestly, no matter what you do, somebody's going to have something negative to say, and you just can't please everybody. But in that situation, her family knew. Her family absolutely knew that she was seeing a guy that she should not have been seeing. She shouldn't have been seeing anybody. She's 11, 12, 13, 14, and then nobody knows, at what point she was unalived and didn't even make it to 15. Everybody failed her in that situation. Yes, Carol, I agree. It does go both ways. Hot Pie says, my parents didn't balance anything. I just knew by the look of it. I think my parents were pretty pretty strict, which I think was good for me. I don't know. We can get in the whole rabbit hole of parents parent how they parent, and then the child, if a parent is really strict, what if the child's personality is that's not how they need to be loved? You know what I mean? Like, you can get into the whole everything. It's a deep rabbit hole that we can go down on parenting, and I have no reason to be speaking on it because I have a dog, so don't even listen to me. Yeah, and that's good. I like that. Natural consequences. Are you talking to me, Sally? How many dogs have I owned since I became an adult? So I had my boxer, Emmett. I got him when I was 18, maybe. And then I had a female boxer as well. Her name was Mackenzie. I called her Mackie. And then they had puppies on accident. And there was 12 of them. They all lived. So I don't know if those count or not. And then I have my Bronxie. It took me about 10 years or so to get Bronx after Emmett. And that's it. So just my 2 boxers and then Bronxie baby boy. Oh, Bronx is living the good life. Let me tell you, my goodness. Okay. So, funny enough, when I made the episode yesterday, which I'm hoping you guys will like, I want to do every Sunday. I want to do an episode where I pick the biggest booms from different creators regarding just the IDAHO4 case, and just say like, hey, Jules found this week and this is what it said, and on so on and so on. But funny enough, when I was making that episode yesterday, almost everybody last week had an episode. Their main point was the knife sheath. And I don't think, each creator that I looked into, everybody has different amounts of subscribers. So, one of them was Harsh. One of them was Jules. One of them was an even smaller creator than me. So it's just weird that everybody was pretty much talking about the knife sheath last week, and basically the lack of transparency with it. I find it really interesting because in the video yesterday that I never got to post because it wouldn't upload, obviously you guys remember the Shanann Watts case, right? Chris Watts. Not many people that I can remember had much to say about the investigation itself. And there was not really one person that didn't agree with the outcome of the investigation, right? Everybody knew Chris did it. It wasn't a secret. And I don't think many people question that either. But I think the reason for that is because how transparent these officers were handling this case. I mean, for crying out loud, we got to see pictures of Shanann's clothing and what she was buried in and what it looked like, and the sheet she was buried in, the burial site. They even gave us body-worn camera of the freaking most adorable babies being pulled out of that oil tank. Are you kidding me? But IDAHO4 can't give us literally crime scene pictures of the sheath bagged and tagged? Why? It's so ridiculous. No, I totally agree that Kat, that her friend was pretty much without her friend Nicole, that case might have been a mess. I mean, she was on it. And yeah, I think that's where that case started, obviously. And it turned out the way it did mostly because of Nicole. But I still think the officers were hello, Decky. I still think the officers were pretty darn transparent with the public that were interested in the case, because they didn't have to give us anything either. I think the only question that most people had in the Chris Watts or Shanann Watts case is, was Nicole Kessinger involved or not? And that's what most people were digging for. Or were at what point were the babies unalived? And I think that's what most people were searching for. It wasn't necessarily anything to do with the investigation itself. I just don't understand when it comes to the IDAHO4 case. yes, it's a different case, obviously. But the amount of heartbreak regarding the case, I think, are pretty similar. I know that in the Watts case, there's little babies, and that you can't even compare to that. But the Idaho 4 is, I think, where it's at because there's no transparency. And I think that when there is no transparency, that right there tells you they're lying. They're lying. They're covering stuff up. They're not being honest. And that's why they cannot be transparent, because all of their own lies would come out. And that's why there's really not much of any reason that the documents in the court side of it should have even been freaking sealed. For what? And like I said, oh, I did Christina the Watts house. Christina says their house is haunted. Did you guys see that video? I've seen several videos. And then the people that moved into the house, now they have like family issues going on that are pretty bad. It's wild. It's like the house is haunted. Crazy. I'm going to open my Celsius that is not sponsored. It's just yummy. But yeah, I think the lack of transparency in the Idaho 4 case is the biggest problem in the Idaho 4 case. My other thing with Idaho 4 right now is the thing I'm stuck on right now is the knife sheath, number one, and all the issues that come with that. But the transparency as well. My question is, and I know people talk about this, I just don't know if people understand the gravity of it. Have you guys ever thought that the two things basically for the guilters that tie Bryan Kohberger to this case is the knife sheath and the DNA on it, and the white car some people think that ties him to the crime? Those two things are pretty much the only two things that the officers went out and did the same thing as those, right? So what I mean by that is the officers turned around and bought a K-bar knife sheath, and sharpener on Amazon and had it delivered. They also went out and took their own undercover vehicle and made a video on it in the dark to see what it looked like. Has anybody thought that maybe those two things never happened by Bryan Kohberger, but what we're being shown and what's being talked about is actually what the police did rather than actual Bryan Kohberger stuff? Is the knife sheath, if we ever see pictures of it, is it actually going to be the knife sheath that law enforcement bought? And I mean, we pretty much know the car is law enforcement's own undercover vehicle, but are we seeing the actual footage of them testing their car rather than an organic footage of a car coming and going? It's like the only two things that connect Bryan Kohberger are also the only two things that officers basically recreated and could just say what they did is the organic stuff that came from Bryan Kohberger when it's not. If that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And that's what's sad is I don't think I've ever seen a case where I'm like, oh, police went out and bought the same object that was left at the crime scene. Why? And then to question, is it because that's what they're going to use to make us think a knife sheath was found at the crime scene? Because the knife sheath, you're absolutely right. 427, the knife sheath is total bullcrap, in my professional opinion. Hi, good to see you. I agree. At this point, I agree. And the reason I agree, and I don't think previously I ever thought it was made up or a red herring, but the more we dig into it, the more I'm starting to think, was it legit? Was it actually there? Did they actually find it there? We've got several officers coming into the room, taking note of like, this was on the dresser and this is what the curtains look like. And this is where I saw red fluid. No mention of the sheath though. And then Payne shows up. He spent some time in the room alone and he says that he can see it from the doorway. But as Jules just put out last week in a report by somebody else, I think Smith maybe, the report says that after they pulled the blanket is when you could see the knife sheath. And then we've got another report that says it was on Maddie's left side, and then a contradicting report that it said it was on her right side. So at this point, it's like, was it actually there? Like, this is getting ridiculous. There's so many contradictions. Bridget says, Showalter is my number one suspect. There's no way someone can do what he did that night and be seen as innocent. I'm going to be honest. I think that the swabs they took from his house that were ruined, I think was ruined on purpose. I think it was ruined on purpose so they couldn't tie him to it. That's what I think. And now I have to be honest. I'm really, really confused at Pav's video. Some people seem to agree with Pav and some people seem to disagree with Pav when he says that the apartment searched on Queen Road was actually a kid by the name of Jackson Schneider, which is the son of Mowich. And there's a report on Mowich. He was the person that there was an abandoned car and he was seen walking and was all cut up and then taken to the hospital. And then they took his DNA to see if it came back to match with anything at the crime, just because his wounds looked like knife wounds and not from a car accident. And then he died, basically. So Pav is saying that the guy that I just described that passed away, that his son is Jackson Schneider and lived at Queen Road, and that's the JS and not Jack Showalter. Some people believe what Pav is saying. Can you guys hear Bronx? He's dreaming, like yelling in his dream. And some people disagree with Pav and say, no, Jack Schneider is not related to Mowich at all. I haven't dug into that. I haven't even looked. I just listen to Pav sometimes. But I'm going to be honest. There's some things that Pav has put out that I have disagreed with and have proven that it was not factually correct. And because I haven't dug into what Pav is looking into, I can't even say if I agree or disagree because I don't have an actual freaking clue. So Bridget says, I do not agree with Pav. Okay. And I know he called out Phoenix, but I have to be honest, I haven't really watched Phoenix in a while. So I don't even know what he was really calling her out on. So I don't know. Let's see. Hello, Devil Woman. All right. So I'm sure some of you have seen this already, but I'm going to play it anyway because it really, really frosts my darn cookie. I'll tell you that. We're going to watch probably not all of it, excuse me, but some of it from Angenette Levy at Crime Fix, at Law and Crime, and just by the way, Law and Crime can kiss my behind. Every single video I have made that I put anything with Law and Crime in there, such as the body cam that we just got a couple weeks ago when the officers first arrived to the scene. You know, Law and Crime was one of the only ones that had it at first. And so I used a clip. It was 20 seconds. they're trying to demonetize my video or make me take my video down because I used one of their clips for 20 seconds so they can kiss my butt. I said, no, I'll just take it out. Freaking buttholes. Anyway, this is the interview with Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings. This is a new interview, and it irritates me.
That he went there with a specific target in mind.
2 prosecutors in the murders of 4 University of Idaho students were on the case from day one, and now they're talking about what it took to put Bryan Kohberger behind bars for life. So what was your working theory here about why Bryan Kohberger went to King Road that night? I talked with Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings about the case that changed everything in their small town and how they felt about that big leak to Dateline and why they didn't.
Oh, speaking of huge eyes, actually, I saw this and I have no idea where I saw it because it was a couple of weeks ago or whenever the pictures came out for Bryan Kohberger's apartment. Remember when they told us he was on a thyroid medication? I don't know if you guys know, but some thyroid conditions can make your eyes bulge out, and it like Wendy Williams, for example, and it makes it's called Graves' disease. I think that was the old terminology. I don't know what they call it now. It was called Graves' disease, and having a thyroid issue can make your eyes bulge or much bigger in some cases with this thyroid problem. Now, I know he was on medication for it. I don't know if a side effect of the medication is to make your eyes big or not, but there is something to do with pressure in your eyes when you have a thyroid problem. So that could be why Bryan Kohberger, everybody mentions his eyes and how sometimes they're big. In this picture, they look normal to me. But I do know that when you have that issue with your eyes that's connected to the thyroid, it can like subside and then get worse and then get better and then get worse. So who knows if he had that problem or not.
Get Kohberger to talk before making a deal.
Oh, okay. Good to know, Christina.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette.
Christina says she's on the same medication
to Moscow. I can
Bryan, but her eyes, it does not make her eyes like bug out pretty much. I don't know if it's person to person, you know, it might make some eyes bulge.
But there were people in that city who feared.
So who knows? I actually don't know the answer to that, but it's possible.
In exchange for taking the death penalty off the table. It's called a proffer. And prosecutors can request that as part of a plea agreement. Instead, Bryan Kohberger walked into prison holding on to his story with the knowledge of how he committed this crime and where he hid the evidence. Now, some on social media still believe that Kohberger is innocent despite his guilty plea. Their minds may never be changed. But Kohberger admitted in court that he committed these murders.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Carol.
Yes.
Exactly.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that are?
Well, we don't need to watch that part. We don't need to watch her. Oh, this irritates me.
Moscow 23 times late at night between July 2022 and the week leading up to the murders. Also on.
Why do people get away with saying that? Why do people get away with saying he went by their house 23 times late at night? But they forget to add, but he never connected to the tower that actually services their house. All he did was go to Moscow. He did not necessarily go to their house, by their house, around their house. Why do they do that?
Kohberger's cell phone, more than 150 selfies. He was obsessed with himself. And one, he appears to be taking a selfie, but really, it's probably all a ruse. Because in the background sits a beautiful young woman on a baseball field with blonde hair. She has a very...
Oh my gosh. God forbid Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old male, takes a selfie at a baseball game that he's clearly enjoying himself at with a female in the background. God for freaking bid. He is a 28-year-old male, you know. whether he found her attractive or not is not the point. Like, he's a male. Males do stuff like that. My
Very
goodness.
similar look to Maddie and Kaylee. Was he really scoping out that woman? I think so. And also, Koberger appeared.
And so what if he was? So what? It's not like there's a picture of him walking up and groping her. Like, at least he's being respectful. Like, oh, I think this girl's cute. Let me, like, what the heck?
To
Who
have an
cares?
obsession with serial killers. That went beyond what a criminology student would research, particularly Ted Bundy, who sexually assaulted and murdered dozens of young.
That's hilarious, Fizzy. That's freaking hilarious. She says, well, I looked at Angenette Levy's selfies. She has a few where she's at a game and she's caught people in the background of her selfie. I mean, isn't that kind of given? There's also like an umpire or a coach or something walking in the background of it too. How do you know that maybe he doesn't have a thing for men and he's taking the picture because of the guy in the background? Like, you don't know that. He needs a trial. I am convinced that the reason it didn't go to trial is because they knew he would walk. They knew that.
Women from Washington to Florida. In Tallahassee, he murdered 2 sorority sisters at the Chi Omega house in 1978 and attacked others in the house who survived. Koberger's guilty plea means he won't leave prison until he dies. So I want to bring in the two people
Denise.
who led this
Or Hot Pie.
prosecution. Bill Thompson is the Latah County prosecutor, and his chief deputy is Ashley Jennings. I want to thank you both for coming on. Bill, I'll start with you. How are you feeling? You know, we've had some time now. Some time has passed.
Look at Ashley's eyes. I swear she is taking something, and I don't necessarily mean like she's taking something illegal. It looks like a medication that she's on is making her eyes do that. I have a medication that I don't take on a regular basis. I take it maybe once or twice a month, but it makes my eyes do that too. It's so weird.
After this guilty plea.
Well, we're certainly pleased with getting a final conclusive resolution to the case. That's a relief for most of the victims as well as for the investigators and for us. We realize that there's some folks who would prefer that we had made a different decision. I respect that.
Yeah, double
but
woman.
we feel like we did the right thing, everything considered, and having people have the opportunity now to move forward is important.
I know you've addressed this, but I do want to drill down on this a little bit about this plea agreement. Were you surprised when Ann Taylor came to you just weeks before jury selection is set to begin? And she says, I guess, make us an offer. Tell me how it unfolded, and were you surprised?
Well, I think we certainly were not expecting that to happen. The defense all along had maintained that their client was factually innocent. And so Ashley and Josh Hurwitz and I were all on trial track. We'd been working for months preparing for trial, and we were on track to be ready to go as scheduled. You'll remember back in June, I think June 18th, we had hearings with Judge Hippler on the request from the defense for another continuance, and also a request for them to be able to offer alternative perpetrator theories, point the fingers at somebody else. And Judge made it really clear that wasn't going to happen. And it was the week after that when the defense approached us and inquired about the possibility of a plea.
The franchise partner program was something that was good for me. I had always wanted.
So, to me, my opinion, he is literally talking in circles right now. He's doing a bunch of word salad, and it's bull crap, in my opinion. If you remember, it was like right after the sentencing happened, Brian Enton came out, and he had an email, and it was an email back and forth with somebody that had something to do with the case, whether it was Bill Thompson, I don't think it was Ann Taylor, but it was somebody along those lines with this case. There was an email, and it said that what happened was apparently Ann Taylor was talking to Hippler about the case itself and said something about the prosecution offering a plea. And then apparently Hippler turned around and said and told Bill Thompson what Ann Taylor had asked or said about a plea. And that's when the prosecution approached the defense with a plea deal. That's what that email said. And it was from somebody that had something to do with this case. I don't know if it was Bill Thompson. I'm not sure. It might have been Hurwitz. It might have even been somebody else. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But I specifically remember that because I always question, well, who asked? Who came up with this? Who started this whole plea thing? Was it the defense or was it the prosecution? And the consensus has always been, in my opinion, that the prosecution came to the defense. The defense mentioned it to the judge, like in passing and in private, but didn't ask for it. So I don't understand.
So we spoke among ourselves. We reached out to all the families and spoke with the families by Zoom, much as the same as we're talking here, or Teams on Thursday and Friday of that week. As you would expect, there were a broad range of feelings from the families, and that's what we wanted. We wanted to ask them, what do you think about a possible plea offer? We've been asked about a possible plea offer, and we want your input. We took that and met with the attorney team over the course of the weekend and decided to respond to the defense and simply say that if the defendant wants to avoid trial, he only has one option,
Fizzy.
and that's to plead guilty as charged to all 5 felonies, waive appeal, so it's final and conclusive, and it won't go on for years as capital cases are wont to do, and know that he was going to be spending the rest of his life in prison. And the following Monday morning, the defense reached out to us and the court and said the defendant was prepared to plead guilty. That's how it happened.
What changed, Ashley? Do you know what changed?
So didn't he basically just say that they came up with the plea? They called the families and asked the families. They did everything they were supposed to do. And then they offered it to the defense. And on Monday, Brian took it. Isn't that what he just said? Or no, I don't know.
Possibly on their side, because as Bill just said, they said for years he was factually innocent. That verbiage changed a little bit. I remember Ann Taylor saying at a hearing earlier this year, Your Honor, our client maintains his innocence. She was no longer using those exact terms anymore. What changed? You guys listened to the jail calls. Were his parents kind of saying to him, like, hey, maybe you did this? I don't know.
I'm not sure, and only they truly will know what was the deciding factor. But I guess on our side, to back up what Bill was saying, we were at a point in the case where we had gone through several motions to suppress, several pretrial motions. They had exhausted really all of their pretrial avenues and came up short for the most part. So,
okay, which no, lady, what happened was, and it's interesting because I wanted to bring that up regarding all this court stuff anyways. So recently, Lana over at Truth and Transparency was discussing another case, and the case itself and what happened isn't similar really to this case, but there was an unaliving. And so this case is in Florida that she's talking about. And basically how the court case is going right now is very similar to what was going on in the court hearings with IDAHO4. And down in Florida for this case, they're saying, hey, we need a little bit more time because we're not getting all the information we need. And the judge down there in Florida says, no problem. Like, we'll give you the time. Excuse me. And they're giving them the time because they say we're not prepared. So the fact that it didn't happen in Idaho and they asked over and over and over, hi, Liv. They asked over and over and over for, motion to compel. We need this information. We need this. We need that. We need this, and that. And they won't give it to them. That's the reason they weren't ready. And then the judge said, no, we're not going to give you any time. Figure it out. Well, you can't if the prosecution isn't handing over the information that they have. What are they supposed to defend against when they don't know what they have? So that's why that
I do think that weighed heavily in their decision about whether or not they truly wanted to go to trial or not.
Mm-hmm. Bill, I asked you this at the press conference. You said under the law, you can't be compelled to force him to allocute. But why not get a proffer from him? Hey, Ann, we'll let him plead, but we need to know where he put the knife and how he got through the house and everything like that. Answer a few questions. Why didn't you ask for a proffer?
Were you abused by a member of the Catholic Church in Illinois when you were young? A global settlement may be coming in 2020.
And I know that question has been asked plenty of times. Well, maybe not plenty, but it's been asked before. And I agree with that. I think if I was sitting there with Bill or Ashley doing an interview, that would be the one thing I would ask. However, I would not let either of them get away with answering with the same answer they've already given. I would press quite a bit further as much as I could. And I'm going to comment on Angenette Levy and her questioning when we're done watching this. That's her questioning is what irritates me.
We talked about that among the attorney team, and we made a decision that we wanted to make sure that the guilty plea itself was solid if he was going to plead guilty. Our experience, and Judge Hippler talked about this as well, is that frequently when defendants are being asked to explain, they start to minimize what occurred. They can't be trusted for the truthfulness of what they say. And we elected, in order to ensure a solid, sustainable guilty plea to all the counts, that we would not press for more than what the court was going to require as far as the defendant admitting to the truth of the charges.
But a proffer, you could have then rejected it and said, okay, we're going to trial. If you thought he was minimizing and lying, if you thought he was being dishonest, and he could have led you to the murder weapon.
I hear what you're saying, Angenette, and he could have. We don't know if he would have or not. I don't think it would have changed the ultimate outcome. And our interest really is if we were going to be able to lock down a guaranteed result for the families and for the public, that was the focus. Mm-hmm. And we also reflected back to early on, I don't know if you're aware of this, but early on, when the FBI first came on board with this case, they sent agents from their behavioral analysis unit, their profilers, to work with us. And they told us that based on what they were seeing about the nature of the crime scene, the crimes themselves, that even if we were to get the person who committed these crimes to try to explain why it happened, that it wouldn't make sense to normal people like us, and that they really can't be trusted to tell the truth because people like this live in their own different world, which is completely foreign to what we as normal people understand and can process. So that was a factor as well in our thoughts.
Oh, stop it. You don't know. You cannot say that. You're literally just guessing. You're just making something up. You don't know that because you never asked. Why not just freaking try? So a lot of people think that Bryan Kohberger took a plea deal because they were discussing bringing his parents and family onto the stand. And apparently for Bryan Kohberger, his family is off limits. And as soon as his family started to be brought up in the court case and how they were going to be called to the stand is when Bryan Kohberger stopped participating in his own defense because his family is off limits. So if his family is off limits, why would you not go to him and say, here's the deal. You tell us where the knife is at, or your clothes, or, you know, anything that ties you to the crime. You tell us, and you can take this deal, right? We won't give you the death penalty. We won't call your family up to the stand. But if you can't tell us, then we're going to proceed to trial, and we're calling your family up to the stand, which is the one thing he didn't want. You didn't even try it. You didn't even try and ask him. Just like when the officer walked up to his car when Brian Koberger was pulled over, and the officer said, "Was your seatbelt on?" And Brian Koberger said, "No, just being honest with you." We don't know. He might still be in that "I'm just being honest with everybody" headspace, and would have told. Who knows if he did it, right?
This was.
But again, the reason I believe he didn't ask is because there's no point in facilitating that question or even sitting down with Brian to get an answer, because that would have been a waste of everybody's time, because they know that Brian Koberger doesn't know where the knife is at.
Probably one of the most bizarre cases I think that we've ever seen. And that sentiment was shared by experienced investigators who were working on the case from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's horrific. I've been doing this a long time. I've covered some awful cases, and they're all awful in their own right. But these were truly innocent victims. They didn't know this guy, and he goes across the country intent on committing murder. I mean, it's sick. Ashley, you guys live in Moscow. Your job is to prosecute cases. Take me back to November 13th of 2022 when you guys get the call that you have a quadruple homicide.
Before she starts, has anybody seen, it's fairly new. I saw it posted not too long ago, and it's that Brian Koberger at some point visited Chicago, and so now they're trying to see if there's any unalivings in Chicago that he might have had something to do with. That's where I'm at. You guys are ridiculous.
House off campus.
When my streaming bill hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch, I didn't get mad. I got friends.
Yeah, I received a call about an hour after the 911 call from the then chief of police, James Fry. And he informed me that there was a quadruple murder near campus, and was kind of informing me of that, letting me know that we would need to do a search warrant. I can go right back to that moment of getting that call. And then
I don't think so, Fizzy. I think the one you are talking about is, are you guys talking about something else? Are you talking about the one where the girl was walking her dog and her girlfriend was bartending, and she was walking her dog by the park and she was unalived, and then they carved something in her torso? That one I think was in Georgia, I think, right? Yeah, I think that one was in Georgia. Dang, I can't even think of her name right this second. I want to say it's Georgia. I'm trying to think. I'll have to Google it. But yeah, they did look for him for that. I mean, when are they going to understand that he didn't commit any other ones? And for the most part, as far as we can tell, he didn't even commit this one. So why are they trying so hard to make it fit with him? See, that's what irritates me so bad from day one, is everything they got when somebody had landed on his name some way, somehow, that we still don't even know how his name got brought up. Instead of investigating the crime, they just tried to make everything fit with Brian Koberger rather than seeing where the actual investigation would take them. And that's what's so irritating, because there was a comment made by one of the officers that had arrived to the scene later after the sentencing. He was being interviewed, and he said, something about, they asked him a question about Bryant Koberger's connection to anybody to, in the house or to the house. Was there any connection? And the officer said, oh no, trust me. We tried to make that fit, but it just didn't. Why are you trying to force fit everything? Why? Just to force it to be Bryant Koberger. Ridiculous.
I then started working on a search warrant and then responded to the scene shortly thereafter.
And you and Bill went through the house. It's my understanding there's like in the logs, it says you guys did a walkthrough.
Yes.
Tell me about that. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, this is like a crime. It wouldn't matter if it happened in a big city. It would be horrific. But I mean, you guys this is not what you see a lot. I mean, you hadn't had a homicide in years there.
I agree, Denise.
Yeah. So yeah, I think horrific is the appropriate word. It was tragic and immediately horrific. Many of the officers I overheard say that it was, one of the worst crime scenes they had seen. I've heard Bill say that as well. Moscow's had our fair share, of homicides in the past. However, I think this one, with there being 4 individuals present and just the nature of it, definitely it stays with you.
So Bill, you've been the prosecutor there a really long time. You get this call, you guys go over there. The FBI has been called in, Idaho State Police have been called in. To you, this has to just be unfathomable and unbelievable as the county prosecutor that this has occurred in your community.
I think my reaction when I first got the call was more of, this is really bad, and we need to make sure that we have everybody lined out and doing their best efforts on protecting the crime scene and gathering information. I think perhaps one of the advantages of being old.
Very good point, USA Kiwi. She says, why are the guilters still talking about Brian and his selfies? Didn't they get what they wanted? Apparently not. They're just trying to convince themselves. You're so right. Just like the officers from day one of this case tried to make everything fit somehow with Bryant Koberger when they officially got his name, they're just trying to make everything fit. And I feel like it's the same thing with the guilters and mainstream media looking through his freaking selfies. They're just trying to pick out and make anything about the selfie or in the selfie fit with him being a weirdo or a stalker or a whatever. Like, stop it. Well, didn't Ashley Jennings and Bill Thompson do a walkthrough in the house on the same day before the comforters were removed and everything else? So did they see the knife sheath with their own eyes? I'm just curious because I've never heard that.
Older and having done this for a while is I realized the importance of everybody being disciplined right from the beginning. This is the kind of thing, particularly with young officers, and there were young officers who responded to this who had never been to a crime scene like this before, that we had to work hard to make sure that emotions didn't cloud good judgment and good police work. So it was really a heads up, being tuned in an attentive mode, being there to work with our officers to make sure that everything was done the way it was supposed to, and that we collected the information in a legal and credible fashion.
If you or a loved one were sexually abused, these Illinois youth facilities are.
Did you have any concerns about the handling of the crime scene at all? Obviously, you learn things from every case. Did you think the crime scene was handled well, or what are your thoughts on that?
When I arrived on the scene, I was actually in Spokane that day, which is about 80 miles away. And when I got back later that afternoon, got on scene, the crime scene had been secured. The state police detectives were there, and they are the folks that we use to process major crime scenes. They were.
hold on. I'm going to write this down real quick just so I don't forget. Because there's a timestamp of when Bill and Ashley went to the house and arrived at the house. He just said he was 80 miles away in Spokane. So I'm curious what time him entering the house is actually written down as. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to write that down, see if I can find anything wrong with that statement.
Prepare to do their processing of the scene, including documenting the scene. Everything appeared to be in good order, good control at that point. I'm aware now after the fact that the police department had already done some comprehensive photographs of the scene to make sure it was documented in an undisturbed fashion, which is good police practice. We had everybody stepped up and did their jobs here. I don't have concerns looking back.
Talk to me about
how can he even say that with a straight face? They have crucial evidence, in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion, they have crucial evidence. And what that would be the freaking mattress the girls were laying on, the nightstand that's next to them. I mean, other things in the room as well. The blankets they were covered with, that means that one of the perpetrators would have had to touch it, whether they had gloves on or not, it doesn't matter. We know one of them was bleeding at least, so they were covered with blankets, and the perpetrator had to be the one to do that, unless it's the roommates, and touch it. And none of that stuff was taken into evidence. It wasn't until Ann Taylor asked for it in January, the beginning of January, did they then go to the house and retrieve those items for evidence. So no, nobody did their freaking job like they were supposed to here, Bill. I don't know why you think that they did a good job, but they didn't. They did a fairly decent job at covering stuff up.
Important that sheath was and when you learned of it.
Well, we learned of the sheath on the 13th when the scene was being processed. The sheath was found in the bed by next to Maddie's body. And we knew immediately, given what appeared to be multiple stab wounds as the cause of death for all 4 victims, that this was likely a crucial piece of evidence. So it was handled with priority. In fact, it was driven. It wasn't shipped to the state lab. It was driven and hand delivered to the Idaho State Crime Lab, and they put it at the top of their priority. It was just a matter of, I don't remember, a day or so, and we heard back from them that they had located single source male DNA on the sheath, which was very powerful. It wasn't a mixture. It wasn't something that would have been inadvertent. So now the trick was trying to figure out whose DNA that was. And that's where the investigation started off from there.
Obviously, this leads to Brian Kohberger. And when you guys find out the name Brian Kohberger,
one second, I'm going to grab something for you guys so I can show you something. Okay, so hold on. Let me make myself bigger real quick. Okay, this is my little knife sheath, right? So they took the sample from this part on the inside of it, right? Like that. So they took it on the inside part of the knife sheath. I don't know, but I feel like that's a weird spot to be like, oh, I'm going to swab right there for DNA to try, and then use that DNA to try and match somebody. Like, how did you know to swab right there and that there would be DNA there to match somebody? And then they only looked into that one swab of DNA that just happened to match Bryan Kohberger. How did they know which one to send to the lab to try and connect? Do you know what I'm trying to say here? Like, that doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want the different types of red fluid tested on there? Wouldn't you send that off to a lab before you would send some random swipe that didn't have any red fluid on it? And then that's the only one you send, and it's the only thing that matches supposedly Bryan Kohberger? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, yeah, in hindsight, we know that, but how did you know in that moment just to send that one swab rather than actually testing the red fluid on there to see if it matched anybody? That doesn't make sense to me. That really doesn't make, that's like, did they even swab anywhere else? Obviously, we know that they have the red fluid on it, but did they even swab anywhere else on the knife sheath, or just that one inner part of the female part of the snap? Like, how would you even know to swab that part? It doesn't make sense, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to swab a bunch of places and then I'm going to send all those swabs in. From my understanding, that's not what happened. They sent in one swab. Well, how convenient. You just guessed. You just happened to guess. And you sent that in to be tested rather than sending in the fact there was red fluid on there and you didn't test that. Obviously, you can't see DNA, so you just took a guess of where to swab, and it just so happened. Stop it. No way. No freaking way. Yeah, that's what I want to see. And I feel like that is so easy for them to give the public, is just give us a picture of it bagged and tagged. Give us a picture of it bagged and tagged. What I would love to see is Payne's body-worn camera when he walked into the room. Literally blur everything. Make it all black. I don't care. I just want to see the knife on the bed where you said it was found. That's it. If the officers from Shanann Watts' case can put out body-worn camera of them pulling those babies out of that oil tank, they can sure give us a blurred-out picture of the body-worn camera and just unblur the knife sheath. That's it. But they won't do it. They won't do it. They won't even prove they have a knife sheath, let alone that that's where it was found. Freaking crazy.
Burger. I mean, Ashley, what's your thought? I mean, obviously it's like, okay, he's a Washington State University criminology student. He's at home in PA for the holiday or whatever. But I mean, just no connection that you guys could determine whatsoever to these kids.
You're right, Smixon.
We are not a traditional cafe. We're completely unconventional. And my Wix website really has to capture the same magic.
Yes, when we heard the name on December 19th, at that point, that's really...
I feel like she put that date in there on purpose, on December 19th. No. But where did you hear the name? Like, how did you get the name? And then whoever told you that name, how did they get the name? I put Bunny's comment up here and said, we have to keep talking until someone breaks. And I absolutely agree with you. And what I find interesting is we see all these other cases happening, right? Since this case, there's some before and now we've seen stuff afterwards. But what did I just do? But my thing is,
all we had was a name.
In other cases, we see other people coming forward, whether it be friends or family or whatever, people that were witnesses or lived in the area, neighbors, whatever. People speak out. IDAHO4 is the only case that I've seen where nobody says anything. Nobody speaks out. Nobody came forward and said, yeah, I saw Xana at the party. You know, nobody was interviewed on the news saying, I saw Ethan at the party. He was there up until this time, and then I saw him leave. Nobody. Not a soul. Why?
And it was a new name. It was a name I'd never heard before. No one on our team had ever heard before. But we knew that he was a Washington State University student. And we knew that he drove a white Hyundai Elantra. And from there, the investigation really, it was able to take off from there. Mm-hmm. But the name, meant nothing to me in the very beginning because I'd never heard it before. It had not been someone that we had been focused on. We had never heard it before. But after that, the investigation really took off. We were able to do multiple search warrants looking into the defendant, getting his financials, getting his cell phone records. So we did multiple search warrants, got a lot of information back, and that's really when the pieces started falling into place.
Mm-hmm. What is your working theory, Bill, about this crime?
Yeah, I think honestly, Megyn Kelly is the only mainstream media personality, floating head that I've seen to even just slightly start to question this case. She says things about him being guilty and things like that, right? But that's part of what makes me angry about this interview with Angenette Levy too, is they can only say so much under the guidelines of who they work for, right? The channel or program itself. They're only allowed to say so much. They're only allowed to question so much. But to me, Megyn Kelly seems like the one who might look into it as opposed to anybody else. So maybe emailing her, if we all, sent a bunch of emails saying, hey, look into this, or can you have Bill Thompson on your channel and actually question him with actual questions that people want the answer to, rather than the same questions over and over and over that we know what he's going to answer them.
Crime. And why he did this. I mean, you have to have some type of working theory. I mean,
you're right. A lot
juries
of
like to hear stories. You have to tell the jury a story. So what was your working theory here about why Bryan Kohberger went to King Road that night?
Here we go.
And who specifically he was targeting?
Well, Angenette, going into trial, we really weren't going to be proposing a working theory like you just discussed. Our focus was on the evidence showing that we have these horribly murdered young people, and the evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is the one who was responsible for it. The lack of the backstory is something that we have to factor in. It's not an element of the crime. It's not something the jury will be asked to decide on, but human nature is such that if they get distracted by that, they could start creating questions in their own mind that had nothing to do with whether or not the defendant was guilty. So our approach at trial really was going to be much like what we did when we were in court on July 2nd, when the guilty plea entered. And the factual summary of our evidence, that was going to be the trial. And folks,
their factual summary, as we all know, was bullcrap, though. I think there were two things that he stated were actual fact. The other things, before he would state them, he would say, we believe, or we think, or it's a possibility. There were only two things that were actually factual, and those two things are what is in question. Those are the two main points of contention that everybody questions, are those two things he said were factual.
Focus the jury on the elements under the law and what the proof was of those elements.
Hey, Bianca, do you happen to know Outcast's CashApp?
So very clinical, circumstantial evidence. We have the DNA, we have the cell phone stuff, we have the white Elantra,
Exactly.
etc. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I just look at it as, I guess in my mind, when I, just looking at the case, I kind of think he probably went in there targeting one person. I think this is somebody who lived in his own head, as you kind of mentioned earlier. I think that, the cell phone stuff kind of shows that. He wanted to, I think he went in there targeting one person and this spun out of control. Have you ever kind of thought about that?
Angenette, that's certainly a very reasonable hypothesis. And I know that's something that we've talked about, the investigators have talked about. Whether it's 100% accurate, I don't know that we'll ever know for sure, but it certainly makes sense that he went there with a specific target in mind. And it makes sense under the circumstance.
So now he's saying again it was targeted? That one person was the target? I thought they went against that theory.
Chances of what happened escalated beyond what he'd planned. And I think, unfortunately, that's why at least two of the other victims ended up being killed.
Exactly.
Whether we can know that for sure.
Great point, Devil Woman. If you are targeting one person, you get them while they are isolated. You don't break into a house full of people and go ham on them. A house full of people that you didn't even know who lived there. If Brian Kohberger had zero connection with the victims, zero connection with the house, and never, ever actually pinged off of the tower that services the house, which means he was never close enough to get intel on the house, how did he know that all those cars parked outside were not big, beefy men with pew-pews all around the house, and he walks in with a knife? He didn't know that. So you're exactly right, Devil Woman. Like, nobody, who would do that?
I don't think so, but your thought analyzing the evidence certainly makes sense. It's a viable theory.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe
Officially Bubbly says, how do you have a neck and not a neck at the same time? And like a double chin and no double chin. That's pure magic. That is hilarious.
Seen Lieutenant Gilbertson quoted as saying that maybe Xana overheard something and went up the stairs and sadly encountered this monster and then ran down the stairs, and
Bunny Murphy.
That's how things unfolded from there. Do you believe that's what likely happened?
Well, we certainly know from the evidence that Xana was up at the time that this was going on. She had received a DoorDash delivery just shortly before the defendant showed up for the last time around the residence. And so it appears likely to us that she was awake, that she heard something and responded to that and encountered the defendant. And that's what escalated the homicides to include her and Ethan as well. We think that's a very likely explanation of how they became victims.
I want to talk now about the phone. He had wiped it. I've talked to the Barnharts,
Nobody's going to sit there and see somebody else parked outside of the house with their lights on and them getting in and out of the car and walking around the neighborhood trying to find the address for 15 minutes. And then let's say you pull up and somebody's outside doing that and looking for, and then their car is in the same place your car is at with their lights on and they're dropping off food and then you are going to enter immediately after that? No, nobody is going to do that. How would somebody not know maybe they have more food coming? Or obviously everybody, not everybody, but obviously somebody there is awake if they're ordering food. If that was his whole plan, according to them, was to go into a house where people are sleeping and he waited for the lights to be shut off, why would he go in there right after somebody just got a food order knowing dang well they're wide awake and it could have been a male? He doesn't know that. Nobody knows that. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, exactly. Release the times of unaliving. Release them and release the order of them. And don't lie like they lied about what substances were in their system or not. As soon as I saw the toxicology report say that nothing was in their system, and then we see the rugs on the table that they had just been using, and we know that's a lie, I knew then we couldn't trust anything they say.
About what they were able to find and not find on his devices. You know, I know there was all this pornography on there. I mean, do you believe he had a sexual motivation here based on all of this nasty stuff on his phone?
I don't know that we can say for sure.
Yeah,
the medical examiner specifically looked for any evidence of.
The twinkly lights were on, and I'm pretty sure other lights in the house were on as well, not just the twinkly lights. Yeah, it's wild. And the family saying 2 a.m. is the dark hour. Yeah.
Sexual assault and found none. So we really don't know if that was a motivator for him. It certainly could have been, or it could have been part of what motivated him or what connected him to this particular house and these particular young people.
How frustrating, I'll start with you, Ashley, and then I want to hear from you, Bill, was the Dateline special airing?
Exactly, Liv. That is what's frustrating, is because they think that we are all stupid. And then we all sit here and pick and prod and pull and observe all of their BS. And then when we call it out, now we get nothing. They won't put out more information. Something is going on with this case because they stopped putting out crime scene photos, which we know for a fact there's over 7,000 photos because they told me that directly. So we know that they have tons more crime scene photos there. They were getting ready to put out and did not. And now they stopped unsealing any documents in the court case. Something is going on with it. And I want to know what the heck it is.
Pre-trial, just weeks and weeks before jury selection, and kind of airing out a lot of things that you may have presented at trial.
It was incredibly frustrating. It was a big distraction. We were in full trial mode, preparing, and that was just another thing that kind of got added on for our office. It's unfortunate. We were disappointed.
Yeah. Bill, do you think that leak came from your side, and when I say not?
Absolutely. To me, this interview is for the guilters. It's just reassurance that they got the right person, nothing more. So they can say, we need to stop talking about it. Yep. To me, this interview is like, okay, and scene. Like, wrap it up. Stop talking about it. It's done and over. We have other cases like Charlie Kirk now and, stuff like that to worry about. Like, okay, this is done and over with.
The state side, I mean, like law enforcement, what have you. And we know there's an investigation underway, or at least we believe there is.
We don't know for sure. The information that was contained in the Dateline show that was accurate, and there was some inaccurate information as well that they included. The accurate information was known not just to members of the state's investigation team, but also members of the defense team. We have, I think, a hard time wanting to accept that one or more of the state's investigators leaked this. But the bottom line is, if they did, then I want to know that and I want to make sure that appropriate consequences come into place, and that person will never be a law enforcement officer again. Likewise, if it didn't originate from somebody on the state's side, I think we need to know that as well, and that person or those persons need to be held to account. What happened was outrageously reckless, and I think the words disappointed and frustrated probably understate quite how I felt at the time. I probably used some shorter, more direct words about how I felt and how I still feel about it. And we've committed ourselves to cooperate in every possible way that we can to assist in identifying who's responsible if that happens. I truly hope it does. It was horrible. It was just completely inexcusable. It should have never happened. Completely irresponsible. That's the kind of thing that can derail the entire criminal justice system. Judge Hippler was rightfully.
So I'm going to address Foxy Lady first. Foxy Lady says the footage around 1:30 is awful. I have to believe that X and E were unalived then. Yes, you are absolutely right. The 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock on the Linda Lane or the 1112 is awful. Like, you can hear a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard to listen to. Like, it does seem like something is really going on at that time. Absolutely. I agree with you. My other thing is, what Bill Thompson is trying to say is they can get Brian Koberger's, thank you, Bianca. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. 1 gifted membership. Yay. I have to remind myself to add that, whoever got that gifted membership, to our first members only live on Thursday, where we will be doing a giveaway. So I want to be sure and get this new name on the list. Thank you so much, Bianca. So what Bill Thompson is trying to say is, oh, look at Liv. That's so awesome. Let's see. Okay, so what Bill Thompson is trying to say is, apparently they got Koberger. Apparently his name just randomly popped up. They got his phone, and his phone was off, but they tied him to it, even though he never hit the tower that services the actual house, the people in it, the house itself, anything like that, right? They did all these things. They tested one spot on a knife sheath that had barely enough DNA to even test it. Definitely less than the amount of a secondary transfer. Randomly swabbed the sheath and decided to send that off, even though they had no idea if they had anything on it or not, rather than testing the actual red fluid that was on it. And they did all this, and they got Brian Koberger, and they had to, this deep investigation and da-da-da-da-da. But you can't figure out where the leak came from when all you have to do is say, hey, everybody, hand over your phone. Boom. Put it on Cellbrite. You'll know exactly who sent the messages, who sent the information, who got the information. Stop it. Stop it. You guys are investigators, and you can't figure out where the leak came from? That's the biggest load of crap I have ever heard. That would be so simple to figure out. And they're acting like it's now been how long? Months and months and months and months. And they can't figure that out. I'm sure it would take one or two of us to go there and figure it out.
Very, very mad.
Is it getting hot in here?
That bull crap. It makes him so
What did
mad.
Dateline get wrong? You said they got some stuff wrong.
Well, I prefer not to say that right now, because I don't want there to be generally publicly known what was right and wrong from our perspective.
Exactly.
I think that's information that's going to be important to the investigation. So as much as Ashley and I would love to sit down and just say, well, we went through it and here's what's correct and what isn't, that's something we can't do right now. Sorry.
Would you have been able to charge him, even if you had found him through the white Elantra, needle in the haystack search? Would you have been able to charge him without the sheath DNA?
We've talked about it and we haven't had to make that decision. Fortunately, we had the sheath DNA, which really was kind of the icing on the cake, so to speak.
Agree more.
You'll notice that we did not file charges, though, until we had at least a preliminary DNA match with the paternal DNA from the trash pull that the FBI conducted. And
you couldn't file charges. What is he talking about? He's making it sound like, oh, we waited until we had the DNA come back and match it. You had to. You didn't have anything else on him. What would you ask for a warrant for, idiot?
Cotton swab,
in my opinion,
that came back from the lab as
You're
having
right,
the DNA
Psycho
of the father of the person whose DNA was on the sheath.
And I like your
That
name.
was what put us over the top for feeling comfortable filing charges back in December of 2022. And then, of course, once we had the defendant in custody and we obtained a direct DNA sample from him and had the positive match, we knew we had our person.
Now that Brian Kohberger has admitted to committing the murders and waived his appeals, the focus can now shift back to the victims when it comes to discussing this case, rather than future court dates and trials, evidence, and potential appeals.
When it comes down to it, this case really now is all about the victims moving forward. Not only the direct family members and the loved ones of Maddie and Kaylee and Xana and Ethan.
See, exactly. They're trying to, just like we just said, they're trying to say, okay, now everybody can shut up about this case. No, we are not shutting up about this case until we have proof, real proof, not bought and paid for proof that Brian Kohberger did this. He's something. I was going to tell you guys the reason that this interview makes me so angry and mad and frustrated is because Angenette Levy has a show called Crime Fix on Law and Crime, right? And that's where she just did her interview with Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings. Whereas she has another channel, and it's just her channel, that she could have had them on her channel and asked questions that haven't been answered yet, or questions that haven't been directly asked to Bill Thompson or Ashley Jennings yet. And she didn't. So the reason I'm irritated with it is because she might have asked Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings to go on her channel rather than Law and Crime's channel. But they probably chose to go on Law and Crime's channel because then Angenette has to follow the guidelines and can only ask specific questions and can only ask certain questions and can't ask certain stuff. And it has to be detailed what's going to be asked and what's going to be answered and what can go and what is not going to go, right? I feel like this Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings chose this channel on purpose so certain stuff can't be asked to them and they can't be made to answer anything or say, oh, I don't want to answer that or whatever. This makes me irritated because she got the opportunity to interview Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings, and she didn't answer or ask not one question that hasn't already been asked. We already asked these questions. Why won't they agree to go on somebody's channel that is going to ask different questions and demand answers? Why? Why won't they agree to do interviews where they're asked actual questions that haven't been answered yet? Why? That's what we should be asking. That's why this irritates me, because they specifically went on this channel under Law and Crime because they knew what would be asked and they could say, no, I won't answer that. Yeah, they can guide the whole conversation. Lead the whole conversation. Exactly. That's exactly it, because they're hiding stuff. Because they don't want to be held accountable to what they've done or haven't done. It's ridiculous. And this whole interview made me so angry because I'm like, oh my God, you got these people on your channel and that's what you asked them, the same crap that everybody else has asked on mainstream media. And then I was like, wait a second. They probably only agreed to go on this channel because they could only be asked certain stuff and could not have to be held accountable, right? So yes. All right, you guys. Bronxy wants to go to the PARK. You know it's that time. We'll be live again on Wednesday. Thank you to my mods. I really appreciate you guys so much, and everybody else for being here. Don't forget, for our members, we're going to have our very first members only live on Thursday with a giveaway. If you think about it, please click on my poll and tell me which one you'd rather have, whether we should do 2 smaller gifts or 1 large gift. Yeah. Other than that, show you Bronx. Let me see it. My house is a disaster. 1 second. He's laying next to me on the couch. You see him? Hi, Bonty. There you go. Let's see if I can get me back on here. There you go. He's chilling on the couch. So yes, hit the like on the way out. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Do something nice for yourself. Be kind, but more importantly, be kind to your animals. I'll see you guys Wednesday. Yes, thank you, Bianca, for the membership. So appreciated. Now Miss Liv has the chance to win a giveaway. Yay! I'm so excited about this giveaway, you guys. You have no idea. It makes my heart get really big when I can give people stuff. So, all right, guys, have a great night. Be safe. Bye, guys.